played warriors, kings, and gods, but nothing ever hit Jason Momoa harder than watching his daughter, Lola, step into womanhood. Behind the tattoos and the easy grin is a father trying to protect his little girl from a world he can't always control. And when Lola turned 13, the man everyone thought was unshakable confessed he broke down in tears. But what truly caused that emotional reaction is something even Hollywood never saw coming. The love story that began it all. Every great Hollywood love story begins somewhere unexpected, but Jason Momoa's started long before he ever met Lisa Bonet. As a kid, Jason had no idea he'd one day become one of the biggest stars in the world. But he did know one thing. The girl from The Cosby Show completely stole his heart. Her name was Lisa Bonet, and to him, she was the definition of cool. He's admitted that he first saw her on TV when he was just 8 years old and instantly knew she was his dream woman. In fact, it became a running joke in his life that one day, somehow, he'd meet her. No one took him seriously, but fate has a strange way of keeping promises. Fast forward to 2005. Jason had already begun making a name for himself. He was tall, wild-haired, and full of charisma, the kind of presence that turns heads the moment he walks into a room. One night, in a quiet jazz club in Los Angeles, his childhood fantasy suddenly came to life. Lisa Bonet walked in, and Jason could barely process what was happening. Years later, he admitted that he tried to stay calm, but inside he was panicking like a kid meeting his hero. They were introduced through mutual friends, and right from that first exchange, something clicked. Lisa had that effortless energy, while Jason radiated excitement and warmth. She was a seasoned Hollywood icon who'd lived through fame, art, and heartbreak, while he was this big-hearted, adventure-loving actor who still carried the sincerity of someone who hadn't been hardened by the industry. Somehow, they balanced each other immediately, and after the club closed, they ended up at a diner nearby. Lisa ordered Guinness and grits, and Jason was completely smitten. It wasn't the glamorous order you'd expect from a celebrity, and that's exactly why he fell for her even harder. He later said that was the moment he knew she was the one. From there, they were inseparable. Their connection didn't burn fast and fade out. It grew deeper, steadier, and more real with time. Jason often described Lisa as his muse, his grounding force, and the person who taught him how to navigate life in the public eye without losing himself. Lisa also admitted that Jason brought the lightness, laughter, and sense of adventure she didn't know she needed to her life. In July 2007, their love story took a new turn when they welcomed their first child together, a daughter named Lola Iolani Momoa. Jason, deeply connected to his Hawaiian roots, chose the name Iolani, which means royal hawk. It was a tribute not just to his heritage, but to the idea of freedom and strength, qualities he hoped his little girl would embody. The moment Lola was born, everything shifted. Jason was absolutely mesmerized by fatherhood. He was the kind of dad who would do anything to be home, who bragged about diaper duty, and who lit up just talking about her. Lisa, already an experienced mother from her previous marriage to Lenny Kravitz, brought a sense of calm and confidence into their growing family. That's where the blended family dynamic really began to shine. Jason didn't just love Lisa, he embraced her daughter, Zoe Kravitz, as his own. Zoe, already carving her own path in music and film, quickly formed a close bond with Jason. He wasn't her stepdad in the traditional sense. He was more like an extra anchor in her life. Over the years, they've shown up for each other in ways that go far beyond bloodlines, from red carpets to movie premieres, and even family vacations. Despite the love and attention their relationship got, Jason and Lisa managed to keep their private life relatively quiet. For years, many people assumed they were already married. They had 2 kids, a beautiful life, and the kind of chemistry most couples could only dream about. But it wasn't until October 2017 that they officially tied the knot in a private ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. Their marriage felt like the final chapter in a story that had taken decades to write. Jason often called Lisa his queen, and every time they appeared together, there was a quiet tenderness between them that stood out, even in the chaos of Hollywood. But even in the most picture-perfect stories, time has a way of bringing change. As their family grew and the years passed, something else began to unfold that would take Jason from the easy confidence of a husband to the raw, emotional side of being a father. The world saw the movie star, the warrior, and the protector. But raising Lola would show a very different side of him that no camera or spotlight could ever fully capture. Raising Lola. Nothing could have prepared Jason Momoa for how deeply fatherhood would reshape him. From the moment Lola was born, Jason and Lisa wanted their children to grow up in a world that felt real, not curated by screens or shaped by the noise of fame. Their parenting approach wasn't about strict rules or fancy routines. It was about creating space for imagination, connection, and curiosity. They built a home that felt like an escape from Hollywood, where creativity and the natural world blended seamlessly. Instead of relying on gadgets or endless streaming, they encouraged exploration. Art hung on every wall. Music was part of the air, and the outdoors was their classroom. Lola's childhood wasn't filled with only red carpets or photo ops. They taught her how to climb rocks, bike through rugged trails, and live freely. Jason often said that nothing mattered more than giving his children the kind of childhood he never had. One filled with dirt under their nails, laughter echoing through the trees, and memories that couldn't be found in a phone screen. Lisa, with her calm and intuitive presence, set the tone for creativity at home. She believed that children should learn to dream with their eyes open, to build their worlds from stories and wonder, and this spirit defined their household. Lola grew up surrounded by imagination. Jason wasn't just the fun dad, he was right there beside her, turning every small adventure into something unforgettable. As she grew older, that focus deepened into empowerment. Inspired by the physical training he'd done for roles like Aquaman and Dune, Jason began teaching Lola martial arts and self-defense. He wanted her to understand that strength isn't about aggression, but awareness. The lessons were lighthearted, often filled with laughter, but underneath them was a message she carried everywhere. Never underestimate your own power. Over the years, Lola's world began to stretch beyond their private bubble. She started accompanying Jason and Lisa to public events, and audiences quickly noticed the bond they shared. In 2018, when Aquaman premiered, Jason arrived with his family by his side, as a proud father introducing his world to the people who meant everything to him. Lola, dressed simply and radiating quiet confidence, stood out without trying. It continued in 2021, when Jason brought her to the No Time to Die Royal World premiere, and again in 2022 for The Batman, supporting her sister, Zoe Kravitz. The photos from those nights showed genuine closeness, something rare in Hollywood families. Despite growing up surrounded by fame, Lola's upbringing stayed grounded in creativity. Music soon became her way of expressing that energy. Jason, who has always surrounded himself with musicians and artists, encouraged her every step of the way. In 2024, audiences got a glimpse of that side of her when she joined him on stage and performed Amy Winehouse's Valerie. The moment went viral not because of who she was related to, but because of her confidence and genuine love for performing. The crowd's reaction was pure admiration. She had stage presence, charisma, and a voice that carried the same raw sincerity her parents were known for. By 2025, she performed the song again, this time with more maturity and poise, showing how much she'd grown. Those moments were more than proud dad milestones. They were proof that the creative, open, grounded world he and Lisa built had shaped a young woman capable of standing in her own light. Even with her growing independence, Jason's protectiveness has never faded. He'd built his life around strength, but watching his daughter grow up has shown him a different kind of vulnerability that comes with letting go. Lola isn't a little girl anymore. She's finding her own identity and her own rhythm. And while Jason celebrates this evolution, it has also stirred the realization that time is moving faster than he ever imagined. And as much as he wants to hold on to those early days, Jason has been faced with the challenges of fatherhood that have tested him in ways no movie role ever could. The challenges of fatherhood. While the public saw Jason Momoa as the larger-than-life figure, the warrior, king, and Hollywood powerhouse. Privately, he was just a father learning how to navigate heartbreak while keeping his family whole. Jason and Lisa separated quietly in 2020, long before the rest of the world knew. They tried to protect their children from the noise of it all, waiting until 2022 to announce it publicly. In January 2024, they filed for divorce, and by July that same year, it was finalized. They agreed to joint custody of their 2 children, keeping their focus on Lola and her brother, Wolf. It was a mature decision that came from a place of respect, not resentment. But for Jason, it was still a painful shift. He'd spent years building his identity around family, seeing fatherhood as his anchor, and suddenly, that anchor was being tested. Every routine changed: the sound of the house, the rhythm of the days, and even the silence at night. He still showed up, still smiled for the world, but underneath the public calm was the familiar ache of separation. Jason's understanding of family had always been shaped by distance. He was born in Hawaii, surrounded by ocean and heritage, but after his parents separated, he moved to Iowa to live with his mother. The shift was dramatic, from island warmth to Midwest winters, from a place where he blended in to one where he stood out. That separation from his father left a mark that never fully faded. Growing up far from that side of his identity, Jason wrestled with questions about who he was and where he belonged. His mother nurtured his creativity and independence, but the absence of a consistent father figure shaped how he viewed family later on. When he became a dad, he promised himself he'd be different, present, dependable, and emotionally available. That vow made the divorce even harder to process. Sharing custody felt like a repeat of an old story, one he'd hoped his children would never have to experience. Sadly, those memories from Iowa carried another layer of pain: the bullying he endured growing up. The man who would later tower over Hollywood had once been a quiet kid with long hair and a gentle nature, often targeted for being different. He once described himself as a hippie kid, the type who loved art and nature more than sports or parties. In school, he was stuffed into lockers, teased for his appearance, and made to feel like an outsider. This early sense of isolation stuck with him, teaching him resilience but leaving scars. As an adult, Jason channeled that feeling into his roles, but the truth was, it had shaped his sense of protection, especially over Lola. He never wanted her to feel that kind of alienation or doubt her place in the world. When she faced challenges, he made sure she understood her worth came from within, not from what others thought of her. Fatherhood, for him, wasn't just about providing. It was about healing old wounds through the next generation. His career didn't make that journey easier. Jason's breakout role came with Baywatch Hawaii, and while it gave him visibility, it also created an image that was hard to shake. Casting directors saw the physique, not the depth. For years, he struggled to be taken seriously, constantly typecast in roles that didn't reflect his range. Work came in bursts of small opportunities, followed by long stretches of uncertainty. Behind the scenes, there were doubts and disappointments the public never saw. He fought to prove that he was more than a stereotype, more than the body that fit the action hero mold. Those years of career frustration bled into his sense of self-worth. He often spoke about how difficult it was to stay motivated, especially when his passion projects couldn't find traction. Success came later, with Game of Thrones and Aquaman. But even then, the old insecurities lingered. The pressure to stay relevant, to provide, and to be the figure his family relied on all added up. This challenge heightened during the pandemic. Jason found himself stuck in isolation, cut off from his usual rhythm of filming, traveling, and connecting. The walls closed in, and with them came anxiety and depression. He's spoken openly about how the experience forced him to confront parts of himself he'd ignored for years. The weight of uncertainty, mixed with the responsibility of being a father and partner, became overwhelming. He turned to therapy, working through emotions that had been buried under years of constant motion. He also began seeing an addiction counselor to address habits that had become unhealthy coping mechanisms. That period of reflection transformed him and gave him the patience, honesty, and courage to ask for help. When the world began to reopen, Jason carried that experience into his advocacy for mental health, especially for men. He started speaking more candidly about vulnerability, challenging the idea that strength means silence. He made it clear that real power comes from facing pain, not hiding it. These experiences became central to his role as a father and shaped how he showed up for his children. But the challenges didn't end there. Fame tested Jason Momoa in ways he didn't expect. His humor and blunt honesty, the same traits that made him so likable, have sometimes clashed with the public's expectations. Back in 2011, during a Comic-Con panel, Jason made a lighthearted but poorly chosen remark while talking about the darker aspects of fantasy roles. The comment, intended as a joke, struck the wrong chord and sparked discomfort among fans. For years, the moment stayed buried, but when it resurfaced in 2017, it reignited criticism. Jason didn't try to deflect or make excuses. He issued a public apology, acknowledging how wrong the comment was and expressing genuine regret. Not long after, another old interview from that same year resurfaced, in which he made a similar offhand comment about an intense scene he'd filmed. Again, it wasn't said with malice, but the reaction was sharp. Viewers who admired him for his authenticity now questioned his judgment, and for a while, that incident became a shadow that followed him and forced him to be more mindful of how his humor translated in public spaces. He had to understand that mistakes, no matter how small or old, could resurface. Over time, those early missteps became part of his evolution, and a reminder that the same rawness that made him magnetic could also be his greatest challenge. His blunt honesty about his own work also sparked controversy at times. Jason has always been outspoken about his craft, never afraid to call things as he sees them. At one point, he openly criticized one of his own films, calling it disappointing and implying that it didn't live up to its potential. The bluntness caught people off guard. Most actors keep such opinions private, but Jason's straightforward nature left little room for pretense. The comment made headlines for its candor, with some calling it refreshing, while others viewed it as unprofessional. This unfiltered personality carried into his work environment as well. Over the years, whispers have circulated about him being too loud, overly energetic, or occasionally difficult to manage on set. Those who've worked closely with him often describe him as passionate and high-spirited, sometimes to a fault. The same boundless energy that fuels his performances and his deep commitment to his roles is sometimes a source of friction in more controlled settings. Despite these moments, Jason's ability to bounce back has always set him apart. Whenever controversy hit, he faced it directly, never hiding behind silence or publicists. And just when it seemed the headlines had written his story for him, Jason shifted his focus completely, trading movie sets for oceans, red carpets for protest lines, and bringing Lola with him every step of the way. Shared passion for the planet. Jason Momoa's connection to the environment runs far deeper than publicity or brand deals. It's personal and rooted in the islands that raised him and the culture that shaped his soul. His roots go back to the islands of Hawaii, where the sea isn't just scenery, but a lifeline, woven into every part of the culture. Long before he became Aquaman, he was a boy who learned that the ocean has a story and that every tide deserves respect. As his career grew, so did his frustration with what he saw happening to the natural world. Beaches buried under plastic, coral reefs dying faster than they could be saved, and communities losing touch with the land that once sustained them. He'd seen the contrast firsthand. In Hawaii, people treated the land like family, but in Los Angeles, it was just background. That difference became his motivation. By the time his face was on billboards around the world, Jason had decided he would use that attention for something real. He didn't want to be just another celebrity with a slogan. He actually wanted change people could see. And so, he went home to Hawaii, surfboard under his arm, and camera crews trailing behind, ready to shine light on the issue that mattered most to him: protecting the planet that raised him. In 2022, Jason Momoa shocked the entire world when he shaved off his long hair the signature look fans had come to associate with his strength and wild spirit. It wasn't for a role or a photo shoot. It was a statement. He'd grown tired of seeing single-use plastics choke the oceans he loved. The act carried immense weight. It was his way of saying enough. People expected a press release or a campaign, but Jason preferred action. He wanted the world to see him change something personal and symbolic. Within hours, the video spread everywhere, and to date, it's still remembered as one of the biggest wake-up calls ever. After that, his mission grew into something tangible. He launched Mananalu Water, an eco-conscious brand designed to replace plastic bottles with aluminum, a small step toward cleaner oceans. Every can sold helped fund the removal of plastic waste from the environment. Jason poured himself into the project, often showing up at beach cleanups or ocean events wearing a tank top and flip-flops, and laughing with volunteers. He also took his message to the biggest stage of all, the United Nations. In 2019, Jason stood before world leaders and spoke for island nations threatened by climate change. He spoke from the same raw honesty that made people love him. Lola watched her father take the same passion she'd seen at home and bring it to the world, and laughing with volunteers. He also took his message to the biggest stage of all, the United Nations. In 2019, Jason stood before world leaders and spoke for island nations threatened by climate change. He spoke from the same raw honesty that made people love him. Lola watched her father take the same passion she'd seen at home and bring it to the world. It was a moment that left its mark on her, seeing the man she knew as Dad turn into a voice for something much larger than both of them. Whenever Jason traveled for environmental causes, Lola often tagged along. Together, they surfed on cleanups in Hawaii, planted trees, and helped raise awareness for local sustainability projects. She wasn't just there for the cameras, she became part of the mission. Over time, people began to notice how naturally she stepped into that world, speaking with a quiet confidence that mirrored her father's conviction. In 2024, she joined him at the Common Ground film screening, an environmental documentary focused on soil health and climate change. She stood beside him, comfortable in the spotlight, listening to conversations about conservation and speaking with a maturity beyond her years. Jason didn't have to push her into activism. She found her way into it herself, simply by watching him live it every day. Their shared passion became something ordinary at home. The Momoa household ran on the same principles they preached. Reusable bottles lined the counters, compost bins sat in the backyard, and every family trip somehow turned into a lesson about the earth. They lived close to nature, whether it was hiking mountains, diving into open water, or camping under the stars. And for Lola, those moments built a foundation. But now, Lola has transformed in a way that even Jason didn't see coming. And this new transformation has him super emotional and in tears. The emotional transformation. For all the strength he shows on screen, nothing prepared Jason Momoa for the emotional punch of watching Lola grow up. Jason Momoa had always joked about being the overprotective dad, but behind the laughter was genuine worry. He used to tease that he was terrified of the day Lola started dating, half laughing, half serious, saying that even someone as effortlessly cool as Lenny Kravitz, his former stepdaughter's father, made him feel outmatched. While this sense of humor made people smile, it also revealed just how much Jason struggled with letting go. The idea of his daughter entering that next stage of life hit him harder than he expected. When she turned 13, he admitted he cried, not out of sadness, but because it marked the end of something precious. One day, she was running barefoot through the yard, chasing chickens and climbing rocks, and the next, she was a teenager with her own opinions, her own music, and her own world that didn't always need him. In an interview, he said, "I'm not going to do well with it. I'll just hate it if she brings home some dips. Bad boy." I'm like, if you find a man who treats you better than I, good luck. Jason laughed about it publicly, pretending to take it lightly, but it was clear to everyone how deeply he felt it. Soon enough, the world began to see exactly what he meant. By 2024, Lola had grown into her own graceful, artistic, and self-assured person, much like her mother, Lisa Bonet. She inherited Jason's adventurous side too, and their bond remained as strong as ever. But that bond began to evolve as she stepped further into adulthood. This change was clear at the Bike Riders premiere in June 2024. Jason arrived on a vintage motorcycle, the kind of grand entrance that perfectly fit his personality. But this time, the spotlight wasn't just on him. Riding behind him was Lola, dressed in elegant simplicity that drew every camera her way. The moment they arrived, fans were struck by how mature and poised she looked. She no longer looked like a child of Hollywood, but a young woman stepping into her own. The photos from that night captured more than just a red carpet appearance. They showed a father and daughter at a quiet crossroads, one man still larger than life, one young woman beginning to define her own. Jason smiled through the flashbulbs, proud and protective all at once. His expression caught somewhere between admiration and disbelief. Anyone who looked closely could see the emotion in his eyes. Pride mixed with the bittersweet awareness that his little girl was growing up faster than he ever imagined. Later, when asked about fatherhood, Jason kept his answer lighthearted, saying his kids still like him, though he could feel his cool factor slipping away a little each day. It was his funny way of masking the realization that he was entering a new phase as a parent. Fatherhood has always been Jason's grounding force. Through the highs of Hollywood and the storms of personal life, his children have kept him centered. He's spoken openly about wanting them to be strong and confident, to grow into people who know their worth and treat others with compassion. In an interview, he said, "My kids are my greatest piece of art. If I can pump them full of amazing stuff and surround them with beautiful art and music, then I'm going to live out my life watching them. They're already way smarter and just way better than me. God, I love it. It's beautiful. I want it to be the greatest thing I ever do. Make good humans." Jason is the kind of dad who doesn't just talk about values, he lives them out loud. At home, this means raising them away from the excesses of celebrity culture, with no overexposure, no excessive screen time, and no obsession with fame. Instead, the focus is always on creativity and connection. Watching Lola grow into her own person has left Jason proud and speechless. It's a reminder that even the strongest heroes melt when their little girls become women. What do you think about Lola's transformation? Drop your answers in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our